Hi. Oh, hey, Gags. He surprised me at the same time that I started. So we're here. It is Sunday night. I almost said Wednesday night. That's not good. That's not a good sign. Tonight we're going to, I guess begin the journey of discussing grief live on Facebook and Zoom and all that stuff because I don't know if you noticed, but the pandemic might be triggering some stuff. Just a thought. We kind of started this because last week at some point I was discussing how I'm having such a hard time even scrolling through Facebook. I have very young friends who are, not necessarily from COVID, but getting really sick and things like that. I have a lot of clients that are coming in with crazy illnesses, and they're not necessarily much older than I am or anything like that. So it's starting to wear on me. And then I've had some personal loss as well during this pandemic, and some COVID related and some not. And I don't know, how do you deal with that, right? Or are we dealing with it? So we're going to raise some of those questions tonight. And I'm going to say that one of the biggest things is, and I'll mention it again later, that because I haven't had any chance to have any memorials or to go to a memorial or anything like that for our family stuff, it's very strange. Very strange. It feels like not like it didn't happen, but there's just no closure for sure. That's one thing. Hey Mary. Hey Nene. Okay, Nene's she's coming. She's eating dinner. So I really think it's very important for us to all discuss what we're experiencing with this, and maybe you don't think you are, or you think you're handling it well, and I'm not going to judge you, maybe you are. But there's many types of grief, and the first one we're going to start talking about is incomplete grief. So hi, I like saying hi to you too, Mary. So incomplete grief is the type of grief that maybe you kind of pushed through, or you didn't have, like you were away at school or something like that, and you didn't get to come home for the funeral, or you're just really busy and you decided you lost a job after somebody passed, and you just had to push your way through to get to another job, and you did it, and you think you're fine. And raise your hand if you realize at some point, or maybe you don't realize, but you're not fine. So sometimes you'll think you're pushing through for something and then ultimately realize, like, oh, I've been binge eating and I didn't realize that. Oh, I've been really angry or irritable and I didn't realize that could be why. Sometimes this can happen many months or even years later, where somebody thinks that they've gotten through. That's usually the word. I've gotten through something. Hey, Stan. Maybe Joanna too, maybe. They've gotten through a grieving thing, and they didn't. You don't really get through grieving. You have to process it. It's a process just like anything else. And if you don't do that, hey, Jeannie Beans, it's going to show up somewhere else, basically. Like, you can't fool your internal system. You can't fool your soul. Your soul wants to grieve. So when we don't do these things, and we'll discuss how to process it in a healthy way, they'll show up. They'll show up and they'll haunt you. And maybe they'll come up with a trigger, which we can discuss as well, right? So here's some of the signs of incomplete anger. And this is from Psychology Today. You have irritability, anger. Okay? Plenty of people. Somebody passes away, even if it's expected or whatever, and you have those 5 stages of grief. And some people stop at like the first couple, they deny, some people get angry, and they just kind of stay there in this like really cranky mode of, whatever, this is whatever. So they push it away. Then there's continued obsessing or missing the other. These are the people that have such a major sense of loss, that they don't just go with normal grief, they actually stay in there. They get stuck on the emotional rewind, so to speak, and they have a really difficult time moving forward. You can show up like dialing the deceased person's phone number, which I've done before, or they replay moments of like, regret or cry whenever the lost person or somebody mentions their name immediately. Not just like, oh, we're having a story and like I can feel those things again. They're really stuck in that place. Then there's hyper alertness or fear of loss. I'm going to actually read this one. After loss, life can seem more fragile, right? A person can feel more vulnerable. The world can seem unsafe. This is huge, right? So we lose something that we love, and suddenly the world is different. There's a major change, and there's a shakiness that occurs. You know, when we speak about the root chakra, talking about not just that survival, but that feeling of groundedness. And now, proverbially speaking, the ground beneath you has been shifted. And sometimes this can be cataclysmic. Sometimes it could be a slower breakdown. But your root is in jeopardy, so to speak. Of course, it's not really, because we can fix these things, we can heal these things. But after a loss, you better believe that you're going to suffer in some way, shape, or form of that feeling of steadiness. So I'm going to, you know, take a poll of how you guys are feeling about this afterwards. This is a big one, behavioral overreaction. So if you've lost somebody in the past year, I mean, obviously before this too, but you can probably think back to a time where you found yourself like overreacting and you really weren't sure why. Anybody want to raise their hand on that one? Where you're like, ah. So this is a good one. How do you avoid that pain and trauma? Who am I hearing? I'm just going to mute you guys. When incomplete grief is added to this, then a person can overreact and they don't necessarily know why. So they get like swingy with their opposite sides. They either get really, really clingy with somebody or they're going to pull away. And that's a defense mechanism. You know, we understand that. But this way of coping can quickly solidify into the long-term relationship. So it's pretty dangerous, because if you're swinging to be so clingy because you're like overreacting to everything, or you're making yourself into an island, then you're going to have some issues within the relationship that aren't necessarily out loud screaming, oh, I'm grieving. Of course, there's the addictive and self-harming behaviors. And these are the ones that I think it's okay, in a sense, to go to some of the ones that are not horrendous. You know, meaning like, okay, if you're going to binge eat, or you're going to drink for a little while, or whatever. And I'm saying that they're not as bad because generally you're not going to, you know, do your worst in one weekend. But the big deal is that you can't stay there. We know this, right? You get to an addictive behavior and you can't stay in that place for a long time. If you do, you're going to have a big problem. Apathy, numbness, low-grade depression. So a lot of times with grieving, you'll see that after a while, there will be this part that just kind of shuts down. And maybe the person isn't really realizing, or maybe the friends don't see it either sometimes, because it's kind of like a slower process and they're just not really themselves, but they're trucking through. So people think that they're okay. You'll see this a lot after a period of time. So say you did get to have a funeral and you got to have your so-called closure, and you know everybody is concerned about you at that moment in time, but maybe months down the line things aren't like, nobody's really seeing how you're doing or checking in necessarily, and then something will start to happen where you're just like not realizing that you're pretty depressed, or a little depressed, or kind of numb and apathetic. So now I'm going to go to my Zoomers. You may unmute yourself, peoples. It's a nice mug, Jeans. Yeah. So when we talk about the incomplete grieving, meaning like it's never really finished the process, right? Can you think of a time where this happened for you, where you were like, didn't have a chance for it? I'm going to give you my example, and then you guys can maybe relate. After my grandma passed away, I had to dive right into taking care of my grandfather. So there was literally no grieving time at all. And then I had my kids. Can you guys think of anything like that? Well, Kristen, I know there was a part for you that you were, like, you had got really stuck with Ian. With the anniversaries.
But that was, I don't know that it was really stuck. It just, it took me longer to process out one part and then move to the next. But I did do it.
Oh, you definitely did it. You definitely did it. And that has, I mean, we're not even going into it. The death of a partner is really the biggest thing you can deal with. But I just...
My dad and my stepmom were actually, they were ones where I got super stuck.
Yeah.
It took me years to figure out there was a problem that I was stuck with when my dad died, and I didn't go into like actual grief counseling, but I did sit with the priest of our church.
Yeah.
Who was a friend. He's my age. We were good friends. And he never actually met my father, so it actually was good. He was actually the one who helped me push me through to the next place. He made me own my anger towards my dad.
Ah, there you go.
You know, he made me own that. And that was really, I didn't even think I could be angry at someone who died.
Like, oh yeah.
I didn't think that was,
Oh yes, you can.
Yeah, it turns out it's okay.
Turns out that happens all the time.
And it's normal.
Okay, does anybody else want to share anything? You can shake your head. If you...
Did I miss something?
Yeah, you did,
Did I miss something?
That's okay.
What happened?
Well, we're talking about grieving right now.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. It's okay. So I'm going to come up with, the next part of it is actually like to complete the grief process, but let me go back to incomplete grieving for 1 second. So there's another part of it that Psychology Today kind of misses. So, or they just brush upon saying like an addictive or bad behavior, but that can also be part of a relationship. So for example, somebody passes and then jumping into another relationship, jumping into something else. And this, you'll see this all the time with separations and things like that, just even regular breakups. We have these defense mechanisms within us, right? Because the story is that we just don't want to feel that pain. So our internals go, well, how else can I continue this and morph into something else? So sometimes when somebody loses somebody, especially if it's another grief term, anticipatory grief, if they knew the person was going to die, they might fill that gap, not replacing them, but fill that gap in right away. So pandemic-wise, we're going through massive anticipatory grief. Not just that we know somebody who's sick and like ultimately they may pass, but because there's been such amount of grief and loss throughout the pandemic, we're anticipating that next step. We're anticipating the possibility that there's going to be more loss. And this is pandemic grief. So this is a special type of grief. So you can only imagine how taxing it can be that we have all this stuff happening all the time. That's why everyone's like, 2020 is over, we don't have to deal with that anymore. But of course, you know, we're trying our best, but you can't pretend that there's not loss going on. This is also not just with people. We're grieving losses about how we were living and how we want to live, because we're anticipating that type of change. Got it? Make sense? So how can we complete the grief process? How can, if somebody's cat passes away, can I not think about my cat so much? Kristen's saying it. Because that's the same type of thing. We're getting triggered so much, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, because triggers can actually push us and bring us into a better place with it. But we want to be in a healing place. We don't just want to get triggered and like, oh my God, how do I deal with this? Hey, Jesse. So to get closure, this is like one thing. We kind of throw this term around all the time. One of the big things that I say, especially with people that tend towards anxiety, is to write it down. You know, you don't have to have a beautiful journal. You don't have to have anything fancy, but getting the thoughts out of your head, especially the ones that can continue to be on rewind, it's really valuable. And getting closure, you know, this could be in the form of just a journal. I'm thinking about so-and-so today. I saw a blue jay and it reminds me of them or whatever, but it could also be a closure letter where you're actually right to the person, particularly if you have things that are unfinished, like a parent who was, you know, you didn't have the best relationship. This is where you tell them, you know, I didn't like this. This was really messed up. I didn't like my childhood, whatever it is. And then you just do it, and you can read it to a friend. You don't have to, but sharing it is the easiest way to get that type of closure, because when we say things out loud, it's much different than just like internalizing it. Okay. Another part is, I'm going to kind of summarize this one. All right. Moving towards what you might be avoiding. So this is a thing too that happens when, you know, we kind of want to skip the part of pain. You know, I'm not a big person with the graveyards. However, sometimes it can be very helpful. You want to try to find a way of seeking into that. If you don't like graveyards, okay, but if you're avoiding actually seeing somebody because they might spark that trigger about this person who passed away, they might show you an object that they have, or they might talk about something, whatever. How do we know, like, that it's going to serve us? If you're constantly thinking about these things and we use this in communication, right, guys? We're like, oh, I'm avoiding the situation because I don't want to deal with so-and-so. There are a lot of energy there, whatever. You're wasting more energy thinking about it. You're wasting your energy not doing it. So get a friend and maybe go through the closet of your loved one or whatever and do it together. Or go to the graveyard if that's going to make you feel better ultimately. But don't waste the time worrying about it. Here into the adaptations of going into these bad patterns. Behaviorally changing your patterns. So the more we push against our anxiety, what happens? What happens when we like try to pretend anxiety is not there?
It just comes back worse.
It comes back, right? Like a damn tsunami that just won't quit. So if we pretend that everything's cool, ultimately what happens? We just feel way worse, okay? And you don't necessarily know that it's anxiety caused by grief or depression. You just think, this is how I am, this is normal. But it's not. You know, your core being is not anxious or angry or sad. It's not. Your soul, your core, your soul is full and complete. So to get back to that place of happiness and peace, you kind of just gotta work with everything. And you're going to need support. So I have talked to about 5 people this past week, clients and friends, who have told me straight out they don't do therapy. They don't do it. They don't like it. They don't need it. And I'm like, wow, you are the 1%. Everybody needs therapy. Everybody. You just haven't found the right therapist or the right type of therapy, and something that is not jiving. Everybody needs it. Why? Because we all need counseling. We all need to vent. We all need to get guidance because we are human. So if you have met a counselor that you did not like, I highly recommend you ask a friend, phone a friend, and find somebody or something that you enjoy, because counseling works when it's right. Okay. I'm talking a lot, I'm sorry, but this is what it is. Okay. So, in Chinese medicine, if I'm massaging like the lung channel, some people have eczema with it, I get eczema. Some people have breathing problems, some people have other skin disorders, and some wake up from 3 to 5 in the morning. And that's the lung channel, and that's regulated by grief. Okay? How many times have I massaged any of you and you're like, ow, that hurts up there? Yeah, that's your lung channel. It's not happy. You need some love. So how do you get through this stuff? We don't avoid it. We don't avoid any of our emotions. It never serves us. It never will. So how do you do this? It's a natural response. And let's go into, I like this page. I don't know. Slow down and feel, just like anything else in our lives. The more we pretend it's not there, the worse it gets. So when we do our meditations, which I'm going to do in a few minutes, what's the first thing I say? Lie down, contact the breath, meaning you're going to slow down. So the thing with grief is that when you pretend it's not there, when you make that decision to like just skip this part because it sucks. It comes up in other ways, like we said, right? But also what happens is it never goes away. And I may be saying it incorrectly because grief never really goes away. It just changes the way it shows up, and it comes back in different forms, and then you have to do it all over again, whatever. But meaning there's no processing. So grief really is a process, because as time goes on, your triggers change a little bit. As time goes on, your support changes a little bit. But ultimately, the process is doing some of these steps. So slow down and feel. Have a safe place to grieve. This is a big deal because you can't start crying anywhere. I mean, you could, but you might feel a little silly. Wouldn't be so great. But if you have a safe place, you got to let it out, right? My office is a safe place. I've had many, many people cry there, including myself. I feel like I'm bragging when I say it. I'm like, you come in here and cry. You can scream. I don't care. But you need that. That's really, really important. Don't be afraid to cry. I've had men and women tell me that they don't cry. They don't do that. I'm like, how does this work? How do you not cry? Accept support. A big one. How many of you don't take support? Don't ask for help. Don't say they don't want help. I can do everything on my own. Don't touch my laundry. Don't give me food. Don't do this. No, I can do it. I can do it. I can do it. If you're doing that on a constant basis, it basically gives everybody else the message that, you know what? I'm not really useful to them, so I'm going to back off because I feel like I'm annoying you. And then a month later, like, they really are down in the dumps now, and nobody's coming for them. Nobody's coming to help them, and they're wondering why. Well, yeah, hello, you told me no 500 times. I don't really want to keep putting myself out there. I feel like a jerk. So part of it is you have to watch how you're creating that type of system that's going on. Like, accept help, because you do need it. Jessie says she will always take food. Well, some people really say no. It's true. But I'm glad you said that, because guess what? I will remember that. When you're in pain and you let me know that, I'll be like, so Jess, you want some lasagna? And you will say yes. And I'll say, of course, it's gluten-free. Don't worry. So accept support. And also remember that sitting down right next to somebody, you know, again, COVID, whatever, but just being next to somebody and either holding their hand or just staying there and listening is the best support for so many people, and they don't even know they need it. So I'm going to tell you right now, you probably need it. You probably need it right now, even though maybe nobody recently passed away in your life, and I'm glad that they haven't. But if they have, you definitely need it. So we have to remember how to hold that type of space and how to have somebody sit next to us and just be okay with feeling uncomfortable and taking up their time. You ever have somebody apologize? I'm so sorry, I'm crying. I'm so sorry, I'm taking up your time. You got to be kidding me. This is what we're here for. We're here to do this together. So let's do it. So like I said, for the two people that have passed recently in my life, we haven't had any memorial. It's killing me. We've shared a couple of stories on text, but this is a big thing, because if there's no remembrance, it's like if a tree falls in the forest. Does anybody here? If there's no remembrance of somebody, it's like it never happened. It's like they weren't here, and that would be a big sin. So journal, yes, but share their memories. Share their memories with such love that there's no way that anybody's ever going to forget them. And enjoy it. If you have bad stories about them, make it funny, because they're laughing up there too. They're watching you. And let's go into take part in a ritual. So just like I said, there's no memorial. But I've lit candles for them. I've said stuff on my own. Ritual might have a odd connotation, but the truth of the matter is that we all need ritual in our lives. We need it on a daily basis. We need it for our routine. Our routine is a ritual. If you don't have one, you might be more anxious than you think. So every morning when you get up from bed, you probably use the bathroom, you make your breakfast, you make your coffee, whatever it is. You have your own little routine that's going on. That's actually part of a ritual. You can add your intentions and things like that, but also you can talk to your loved ones. That small type of ritual can be very, very healing. So you might have seen my post yesterday, because I was thinking about today. I was just prepping food. I used my grandma's paring knife. It wasn't the right knife for the job. I don't care. And I was talking to my grandma. And I felt better afterwards, because I do miss her tremendously. And that's a form of connection. That's also part of a ritual. It doesn't have to be a certain way. Let's see. Okay, take one small step a day. You know, I think when you're really grieving, when you're really allowing yourself to grieve, and you can go into that deep place of just sorrow and feeling the loss, this kind of comes naturally, because you'll hear somebody go like, oh, you got out of bed today. That's great. Check. Oh, you're breathing. That's wonderful. And right, we make this joke all the time, like, oh, you're breathing. Check. But it's even more than that. There has to be some self-care that happens. And those are checklists too, because taking a shower or a bath, feeding yourself good food, accepting help from others, that's part of self-care as well. Writing, having any healthy habits, you should get praised for all these things, and you take one step at a time. And when things really rev up internally and you find yourself overwhelmed and overreactive and all these over feelings, then you have to take your breath and you have to take a step back and feel what's happening, and then just tell somebody else. Because if you've ever heard, like, you know, grieving with a friend, you help have half that grief for them, it's the true thing. You can really help somebody else just take that burden away from them. You're not alone. That's what you're telling them. You're not alone. I feel your grief. And that's pretty healing. Okay, we have start routines, go to places that inspire you. This is all good. Yeah, so the death of a loved one is one of the most stressful experiences you will face in life. I'm sure if I asked you right away, like, name the most profound death in your life, you would know. Or name your first main death in your life, you would know. Because those things, they do change you, but they can also change you for the better. Even though it doesn't feel like that, you do grow from it. And if you allow the process to happen for grieving, you'll become more spiritual, more connected, and you know, just remembering that we're all together with it, and it's okay and it's good to feel things. And now that I've said so much, we're going to go into meditation. But I just want to ask you guys before you slow down and turn the lights down, if there's anything on your mind. So I want to clear your mind before we get into meditation. Okay, so if there's anything you want to share, doesn't have to be grief related, but if there's anything you feel like just sharing tonight, go for it. I know Billy's going to say something ridiculous. Happy to see you too, my friend. Thank you. Okay. So wherever you are, get yourself cozy. So the first thing we always do in our meditations is we contact that breath, allowing our palms to rest right by the navel. And maybe this is the first time of the day that you've really paid attention to the breath. And if it's not, that's great. But it's the end of the day and you can feel that end of the day energy, and it's snowing by me. You can feel all these things if you just slow down and pay attention. So when we come into this place of stillness, you can really sense everything that's happening, even outside. And if you focused right now, you can probably feel the snow. So let's go and use that for our guiding right now. So in your mind's eye, I want you to get dressed in your warmest. Put all your layers on. And when you're ready, I want you to see yourself taking a step outside. So we are stepping into a nighttime snow. We don't often get to do these things, so let's really use our mental power and just enjoy that. First thing you contact is the breath cooling down right away. You can get that sense of it. Deep inhale and exhale, how it changes things. Getting that fresh air into your lungs. So my mom used to roast chestnuts, and we'd put them in our pockets, and we would take what we would call a midnight walk. I think I'm saying the wrong thing actually, but we would take a nighttime walk and we called it midnight something. But the point is that it was so different of walking at night. So we're gonna do that tonight. Feeling the snow, allowing a little crunch beneath the feet. Notice if you can hear that right away. Notice how the breath slows down. And with the little light by the moon, you can see your breath in the air. So I want you to take note of your surroundings. If you actually kept yourself close to your home or your apartment, or if you let it change into a different setting. You can still be outside, but maybe there's more woods around, or maybe there's less cars. Just see where your mind takes you. And you don't have to force anything. There's no need to change it. Wherever you are is perfect. And now I want you to take note of any smells that are in the air. I always love that smell of pure winter, where it really smells like snow is coming. For me, it just feels really clearing. So you're going to take a pause in your walk. And now you can hear footsteps approaching you. Remembering you're completely safe. And whoever's coming is going to be friendly. So your meditations are a wonderful place, especially if you have like a home sacred space for your meditation. We'll talk about that a little later too. Where you can invite somebody who's passed and then they can join you in the meditation. So maybe they'll come with you on this walk. And we have no COVID restrictions or anything like that. So if you want to share a pocket with one person, let their hand go in the pocket. And take this walk together and like make it really slow, hearing that crunch in the snow. And you're going to come up on a big tree, and this tree is awesome. It's pine, you can smell the pine, and I want you to look straight up at it. And just behind you, you'll see the moon. The moon is just peering out behind all the pine needles. I want you to notice how black it is around. And then there's this bright, brilliant moon. We just had our full moon. And then there's the snow. And as it comes down, big, fluffy, white little clouds, miniature little clouds. It catches on your cheek, right underneath your eyes. Maybe on your eyelashes. And for a split second, you can see the crystallization. And then it melts. Just notice how it feels to really allow yourself to be in darkness, to really be in this coolness, this very yin type of experience. Yang being hot and warm, and rising, and then yin being cold, dark. We're always like trying to get away from that, but the truth is that balance is what's necessary to make us feel whole. So here we are, delving into the yin, the dark, the night, the cold. And you can sense this peace. So one of you is going to bend down and pick up 2 pine cones. They're really perfect ones. They have all their little seeds. And I just want you to look at it in the moonlight. This real piece of nature. I think pine cones are pretty fascinating because it has this geometric thing about it, and then, you know, it's just coming from this amazing tree that's always green. And it's brown, just like the earth, so it has so many different factors to it. This is a very grounding energy to it. So you're going to go on your way, and you can notice if you've wanted to invite anybody else with you. You don't have to, but they might come in. And if they do, you're going to walk with them. You're going to go towards a forest, so I am going to bring you into a different place. And I want you to see a path that's not very, very trodden on, but you know that it is a path. And I want you to go there, feeling brave and secure. And now you get the sense of going in between trees. You can feel that closeness. There's plenty of room to walk in between, but we went from this open space to this feeling of now you are one with nature for real. They're tall and all around you. There's definitely more cracking underneath the foot. Maybe breaking some sticks. And you'll pause again right here and just feeling that stillness, noticing what it's like to be in more close quarters and yet still feeling that darkness, that depth. And along the ground you can hear little animals, safe animals, scurrying along, darting around, maybe scavenging for some food in the night. And high up you can still hear some birds once in a while. Maybe there's an owl nearby, echoing in the forest. So you're going to come to a bit of a clearing within the forest. And there's going to be some tree stumps. They're not well polished or anything like that. They're not clean or ground down. It's evident that there's been a natural thing that happened here where a few trees had broken. But you find a way of like sitting on them and perching yourself for a few moments. And now I want you to actually talk with whomever is with you. And I recommend that you don't edit it. You don't pretend they're not saying something or whatever you're hearing or feeling is fake. I invite you to just open your mind and allow a discussion to happen. And if it doesn't happen, that's fine. Just sit in silence. If it's a loved one who's passed, see if you can really hear their voice, their intonations. And I want you to invite them. Say, if there's one story you want me to retell, which one is it? So take a deep breath in. And you'll close your eyes here in your mind's eye and see what you can bear witness to in this forest. with whomever is your company. See what you can hear, feel, touch, maybe even taste. Maybe there's a snowflake on your mouth. Beautiful. So now that you've really allowed yourself to experience this fulfillment in the dark and the cold, you have to take your time to go out the reverse way. So as you walk to exit the forest, we're going to allow some thawing out to happen, but very, very slow. Snow is still falling very gently. Your breath is still caught in the air. But from this conversation, from this place of deep healing, maybe you can feel the warmth coming from inside out. And you'll pause for a moment and you'll say your farewells for now, because you can always invite them again. And you'll focus once more on the crunch beneath your feet. And whenever you're ready, you'll go back inside, purposely taking off the warm layers and replacing it with a warm blanket and some tea or hot cocoa. And before we close out the meditation, I want you to actually experience whatever you're drinking. So really focus on the taste of it. And here, in this type of ritual, this act of drinking is sealing in the whole meditation, sealing in that conversation, the feeling, and the type of healing. If there's any saliva that's gathered in your mouth now, I want you to swallow it down 3 times. And visualize a beautiful white light coming from the top and going straight down the center line of the body like warm air. Great. So we're going to very quietly come back on into Zoom. You can unmute yourself and just keep a little on the quieter side so we can maybe talk about your experience. And if you're too sleepy, then stay there, that's fine. So, was it easy to feel everything?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Could you see who was with you?
Yes.
How about you other guys? Can you just give me a thumbs up? Mm-hmm. Was it who? Was this who you expected it to be, with you?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So I always find it fascinating because sometimes it's somebody who you don't even expect. Okay. When I said don't edit your conversation, was it easier to have a conversation?
Yeah.
Not sure. Janie?
I'm getting adept at those conversations.
Yes, I know you're quite experienced with that. Renee, did you talk to anybody?
Because I think I got rusty because Henrietta was here for a little bit.
That's cool.
You know, it's interpretation with the dog.
That's cool.
Yeah.
She got her doggy. I like that. That's neat.
Awesome.
Yeah, why not? Well, I think the cool thing about it, if you get an animal in there, you end up doing a little telepathy in your meditation. So that's cool. Good practice. Anybody else care to share? You don't have to. It's okay. All right, everybody's quiet. It's all good.
Obviously, I'm going to say that you probably know that Ian was with me, right?
No, really?
But this is what's funny. He picked up the pine cone, he handed it to me, and he said, just like the favors at Vanessa's wedding.
Oh, I love Ian. That's gonna make me cry.
I totally just started crying. I'm like,
Wow.
wow.
Okay. Yeah. That's right, Ian. Just like the pine. We had an epic battle. He probably remembers about those pine cones. My mom went ballistic. Because we were trying to get pine cones to make favors for the wedding, and she made me go to crazy places. I had to battle mosquitoes and floods and all this stuff. And we got 0 pine cones from that trip. I was like, you're absolutely out of your mind. Oh my God. She's like, we're going to Jones Beach, they're there. That really made me tear up. Wow. Oh, thanks, Ian. Okay. So, you know, I don't always bring people into your meditation, but Chris and I, a few weeks ago, were talking about how I did a distant healing for her, like at the beginning of COVID, and how I had brought her into a very specific guided meditation in this one place. You don't mind that I'm sharing, I'm sorry. Do you?
Yep, no, you're fine.
I don't think so.
It's fine.
So she's been having like reoccurring images and thoughts about this place. So I think it's a really important idea to have a sacred space for meditation. So if you're called to a certain place, and remember it can change at any time, but if you have that place, that's your best place to bring somebody else in. So this is a place where you can bring somebody that you're having a conflict with. You can bring a loved one in and resolve something, or you can just talk to them, because it is your real home base. We think of like our home base as our house, which I hope it is for everybody. I hope you feel really loved and supported and secure there. But internally, we carry that same space. So when you find yourself preparing to meditate, maybe before I'm speaking, or if you're just on your own, I want you to see if you actually have a go-to. Because this would also be the place that you might do, like before doing a healing for somebody else, or calling upon energy for someone, or prayers, where you would actually go there, because obviously you're cultivating energy there. So it's like your own little vortex. Just a thought. So I'm going to talk to my Zoom people just for socialization reasons. And I hope, I don't know if I want to say the word enjoyed this week, but I hope that it meant something for you if you got to watch before, and if you didn't go back and listen to it. Just talking about grief and how the process is really, really important. You can share it with others, of course. But if you have any questions, I'm here. And don't forget, counseling, counseling, counseling. We all need it. Don't pretend you don't. Yeah. So I'll speak with you soon, and if you have anything else you want to add to it too, you can always drop a comment and we'll discuss more. Okay, guys? Namaste.